Hello, today I'm going to show you how to send contact form 7 form submissions to Facebook conversions, both through the web pixel as well through Facebook conversions API. And while we're at it, we're also going to send this information to a Google Sheet. So for this to work, we are going to use public connect for a webhook as the income to pick up the incoming data. And let's first see how what will be the end result. What will we get? So if I open this page I'm using the test events feature in Facebook, so you can see in real time what's going to happen, and then I'm going to show you how to replicate this process. So I have opened this page, which is, it's a blank WordPress install with just the contact form 7 placed on the sample page. So I'm going to fill the details. And when I submit the form, if we go to Facebook Events Manager to their test events feature, we're going to see the browser event has already arrived. It has been sent, and if we give it a couple of seconds, the server event should show up as well. And last but not least, the two events will get deduplicated. Let's give it a couple of minutes. Okay, there we go. The server event has arrived as well, and you can see it has been deduplicated. One of the main reasons why it gets deduplicated is because we are sending unique event IDs, and the event ID of the web of the web pixel, when you track the conversion from the browser, should match the event ID that you're tracking through the server. Server is actually Facebook Conversion API, and we're using Public Connect for this feature. Okay, well, this is the end result. Now let's see how you can replicate this whole process from scratch. So what I'm going to do, I think I have a tab right here open with, no, this one. I'm just using instawp.io to create a blank WordPress website, and it's also temporary, so they usually expire in 2 days on the free plan. I'm just going to create a blank WordPress website. Okay, this is the one that's just been created. And I have to click actually this button, so it will automatically log me in. Okay, if we check the website, you will see it's a blank WordPress install, nothing else in it. Let's go to the admin dashboard. And do I have any? Okay, I have the default plugins installed. I'm going to delete those. They don't serve any purpose, for me at least. Okay, they've been deleted, and now first I'm going to install contact form 7, and luckily it already comes with a default form pre-installed. Oh, there we go. And next, after activating and installing contact form 7, I will also be needing Google Tag Manager on my website, and I'm using GTM for WordPress. It's this one, Google Tag Manager for WordPress. And I will show you immediately why we need this plugin. It's not mandatory, but it just makes things a lot easier to pick up the data from the page, from the web page. Otherwise, you would have to use a lot more custom JavaScript to be able to pick up all the data. So after we installed both these plugins, the first thing that we should do, let's go to the settings of Google Tag Manager for WordPress, and we need to specify a GTM ID. It's the ID of the Google Tag Manager container. I'm not sure if you already use Google Tag Manager on your website or not. If you don't, I'm just going to create a Google Tag Manager account and container from scratch. But if you do, you can just skip the part where we create the container. So I've already have a tab open here. And the account name, I'm just going to call it TF7 to Facebook Commercial. Now this would normally be your brand name or your company name. I'm just using something random because I'm going to delete it later. And usually a container is used on a single website, so it's a good practice to put your host name, the website name, or like domain name in here, but you could also put whatever you want in there. I think I'm just going to copy this part, the host name. Sorry, there we go. In here I'm going to select web as the target platform, and I'm going to create it. After we carefully read the terms of service, we are going to agree, and what we want from right here is this part, GTM dash and some random string. You don't necessarily have to copy it from here, it's available everywhere. I'm going to close this pop-up, and you could see it's also right here, the GTM ID. I'm going to copy it, and let's place it in here in Google Tag Manager for WordPress in our plugin. I'm going to save the changes. So what this does right here is that it installs the Google Tag Manager content. Okay, I didn't expect any errors. I'm hoping it's just temporary. So while it loads, it installs the Google Tag Manager container on your website, or the script, similar to how you would do with the Google Analytics script on your website. Now, why do we use this method rather than, if you went here, there were these instructions where we should manually place this code in the head and this code in the body of our website. It's because, well, first things first, it's easier to just copy the GTM ID in that plugin, but even more important, we have a couple of extra features in this plugin that we're going to be using, and that is at basic data, we can send the visitor IP into the data layer. You're going to see soon where exactly it's going to send this data, so that I can pick it up and send it further to Facebook Conversion API, for example. It's not mandatory, but it helps with the duplication event, with the deduplication of events. So I'm going to save the changes. You should know that you should require consent before sending the visitor IP. So this is just a test for me. I'm not going to be focusing on that part, but yeah, you shouldn't grab the IP and send it elsewhere without getting consent from your website's users. And the next thing that I want to use on Google Tag Manager for WordPress is, if you go to integration, you will see that it has a pre-built integration with Contact Form 7, and I just have to check this box. What this will do, it will push into the data layer, well, two main things. One, it will be an event whenever the form gets submitted successfully, and the second, it will be the inputs of those fields, so what exactly the user typed before sending the form. It will be the values of the form. Okay, we have done this. Let's embed the Contact Form 7 anywhere on our website. I'm just going to go to Contact Forms. I'm going to copy this shortcode ID, and I usually just put it in the sample page that's built by default with every website, but of course you should be using your Contact Form 7 where you actually need it. And let's just put it, I'm going to put it here right above the paragraph. I just pasted the shortcode, it automatically switched to a Contact Form 7 block. I'm not going to be focusing on design or anything like that. I'm just going to let it here. I saved, and now I'm going to view the page. And there we go. Right now we have a form on our website, Contact Form 7. And more importantly, something that's, well, not as easily to see, is that we installed Google Tag Manager for WordPress on our website. Let's see what kind of data we have available in Google Tag Manager. If we go to the preview button, if you click on the preview button, it will open Tag Assistant, and you will soon see. Actually, I don't like the page URLs. Let me just quickly change the permalinks. This is just something that's bothering me. It doesn't matter what kind of permalink structure you are using on your website. So I'm going to switch to post name. Okay, and I'm going to go back to the. Okay, now it's /sample-page. Okay, And in Google Tag Assistant, it asks us what page we want to debug or we want to inspect. I'm going to paste this page URL right here. This is just to show you what kind of data we're currently getting from the GTM for WordPress plugin. So whenever a form gets submitted, if you have not used the Tag Assistant before, well, it's basically like this. It will show up all the events that are happening on your website, well, that are being pushed to the data layer, which is, well, it's used for Google Tag Manager. Let's keep it simple. So it's pretty much whatever information it's able to pick up, and what kind of, yeah, and what exactly you want to do with that information is up to you. Like, there are plenty of tags. We're just going to use one later to pick up the data from the website and send it to Public Connect. Or it would also work with any other webhook solution, but my guide for today is all built with Public Connect. So right now we just see that, okay, the window has loaded, the page has finished loading, and if we submit the contact form 7 form, I'm just going to put, well, it doesn't really matter what you put in here. Okay, we got the confirmation. When this confirmation is shown, also an event is sent into Google Tag Manager. Well, it's pushed into the data layer, and if we want to see what kind of information we have available in the data layer, so we had the visitor IP. This is the one that we enabled in the features, and most important, we have the inputs of our contact form 7. This is actually not necessarily not mandatory for Facebook conversion API, but I will want to also send this data later using the same webhook into Google Sheets. So I would like to have the inputs picked up automatically. Moving on. Well, I've already built the container, and I'm just going to show you how to import it, and I will briefly explain there are 2 tags and what they do. But it should be quite so I'm just going to show you how to replicate the process. There is a bit of custom code involved. You don't have to understand it, you just have to understand what you need to change on your end to be able to replicate this process. So I'm going to go to admin, and I'm going to import the container. I've already built the container on a different GTM account, and I'm just going to import that one. And if I could only remember which one it is. Okay, it should be the newer one. Okay, after I select this JSON file, I have to import it into my GTM account, and well, then all of my previous work will be back. I will send, or I think I will place a link with a link to the JSON file, to the container that I have exported, so that you can import it yourself if you want. Because otherwise you would have to replicate well, you will see, it's a bit of custom code involved, and it would be quite difficult for most users. Well, it will ask us to choose a workspace. You could just use existing, but very important, I'm going to use the default workspace. Very important, use merge. If you overwrite, you will lose all the existing tags, triggers, and variables in your GTM container. If you merge, it will just add them on top of what you've already set up. So in my case, since this is just a completely fresh GTM container, I could also select overwrite, but it's best to just use merge. And it doesn't necessarily, okay, let's just go for a rename. It's unlikely that you will have the exact names for your tags, triggers, and variables that I did, so you could probably just skip this one, just leave it to overwrite, but to be safe, we can use rename conflicting tags, triggers, and variables. Okay, I'm going to confirm. This will take a second, and now it has imported all of the tags, triggers, and variables that I have used before. Let's just go through the tags, and I will show you what they do. So there are 2 tags. This one sends the conversion whenever a form gets submitted into, well, it sends the conversion to Facebook as a lead through their web pixel, through the browser tracking method. And the second one right here This one sends the data to a webhook, and from there we can send it to multiple places. I will send it to Facebook Conversion API and also to Public Connect. No, sorry, I will send it to Public Connect first, and from there to Facebook Conversions API, as well as Google Sheets. It's just to show you that it can be used for in multiple places using a single webhook. You might want to send it to a CRM or, well, whatever. Maybe you want to use Airtable or something like that. Okay, you don't need to know, or actually, let's just quickly go into this tag. This is where the custom code is involved. This one is actually has a user interface. It's very intuitive. What you need to you need to pay attention to in this tag is the Facebook pixel. That should be yours and not mine. If you want to change the type of conversion, or like what should be the name of the event that you're tracking, I'm using lead. You could switch to any other type of event that you would want. And very important, on the more settings, we're also sending the unique ID. Now you don't have to change these fields right here. These are variables, and I will show you where to change them with your own. Actually, you just have to change the Facebook pixel ID. When it says change this, it doesn't mean to change it in this box. It just means to change it the value of the variable, and I will quickly show you where you should change it. And well, this one is quite easy to follow, but if we go to this one, it's a bit of custom. Well, it's actually just JavaScript, not that much custom HTML. And this is the part that picks up data from your website. So this is that, and sends it to a webhook. And right here, this is also a variable that you should replace with your own webhook URL. Otherwise, you would be sending me the data, and I don't have any reason to use it. I will make sure to delete my my webhook after I'm finished with this demo. And this part right here is the information that we're sending to our webhook. If you are familiar with JavaScript, you could add more information that you would want to send. It's information that you pick from your website, but from on the browser side. So it's actually, you could even send, like, whenever somebody clicks on a button, whether someone uses an ad blocker or not, whenever someone scrolls to, I don't know, 90% and so on. You could use it for any other purpose. You just have to change these values pretty much with what you would like to collect, but it's a bit more difficult. It's JavaScript, so some of you may be able to do it, some of you may not. But if you follow this video, you will definitely be able to send contact form 7 form submissions to Facebook through their conversion API. Let's go back to the variables, and this is where you should make 2 changes, and that's it. The only thing you need to change is, well, there are 2 variables that you can see, and they already have the name change this. And if you click, for example, on the Facebook pixel ID, you should click on here on value, and you should replace this value with your own pixel ID. And this is the one that you get in to your Facebook account when it's the ID right here. When you're into that data sources, when you're looking at your account's pixels, and you could also get it right here. It's this pixel ID. If you click it, it will be copied to your clipboard. I'm going to use the same pixel that I've already used, but you should definitely, actually, I'm just going to copy and paste it, even though it will be the same value. I want you to remember that you should change this. Okay, let's go back to Google Tag Manager, and here you should delete the existing value and paste your own, which in my case is identical, but that's not the point. I'm going to save, and we should also change this constant to a webhook URL, and I will create a new webhook in Public Connect so you can see this process. And well, this is my existing webhook. I'm going to delete it. It's a Public Connect URL, and I will have to replace it with a new one. So I'm going to go to Public Connect. I'm going to create a workflow. The name is not that important, and okay, I think it's because of my blur. I was not able to edit this box. I don't know exactly why. Anyway, I'm going to call it CF7 to Facebook Conversion API and to Google Sheets. This is just something I'm going to use for today. It doesn't really matter. So the first things that we have to select is the trigger. So when should things happen, and I'm going to use webhook. So basically, whenever the data is being sent to this webhook, it should do something. Something being that we are going to send the data to Facebook Conversion API. After you create, you choose the webhook, you will get this URL that you should place in Google Tag Manager, and it will also, you will see the spinning wheel, because Public Connect has not yet received any data, and it doesn't know what the information will look like, so it doesn't know what to send next. So what we need to do right now, we're going to copy this URL, which I already did. I'm going to go back into Google Tag Manager, and I'm going to place it in the value field of the constant webhook URL. The name is not important. You could, after you make the change, you could remove this part like this. I'm just going to do it anyways to make it look nicer, but that's not important. It will not break anything if you change the variable names, because they update wherever they have been used within the code or in other tags. Okay, I'm going to save. I'm just going to change this from the name of this variable as well. And what I want to do right now, well, I want to see what kind of data the webhook is going to receive. I already know that, but let's assume that I don't. So while you are working, while you are debugging, you should always use the preview mode, and you should only submit after you are finished testing and you are sure that it works as you are expecting. So I'm going to close these pages. I'm just going to grab this URL because it will ask me what page I want to inspect, and I will click preview again. So what's the difference between the previous debug, or like the previous time we used the debugger, the tag assistant, is that right now we're using the new webhook URL. And if we look at Public Connect, the wheel is still spinning. It's still waiting for a webhook response to be able to find out what kind of information it should wait for, it should receive, and whenever that arrives. And right now, if we fill out this form, I'm going to fill it with, well, I could just use any data, but how are you? Okay, I'm going to submit. And once it has been submitted, well, you should notice two things. Well, the web pixel, the web conversion has been sent, but not the server, the conversion through the server side or through Conversions API, because we have not yet set up that workflow in Public Connect. You would need the Facebook Pixel Helper Chrome extension to see this. It's not that important because we will use the test events feature in Facebook to be able to debug whether the web conversion is being sent as well. And now if I go to Public Connect, you should see that the wheel is no longer spinning, and this is all the information that it has received whenever that webhook was triggered. So it received the user agent, page URL, date, pixel ID, visitor IP. Remember that you need to ask for consent for this one, event ID, and you can ignore these, although they are needed, but they're a bit more difficult to explain what they represent. And at the end of the response, if you're going to see, it's the values or the input in your contact form 7 fields. So there's my name, my email address, my subject, and my message. Now this will work with every type of field and every type of input in contact form 7. It doesn't you don't have to use just the default fields that like I did. And last but not least, the contact form ID. This is necessary because, well, you are definitely going to, well, not definitely, but most likely going to have multiple forms on your website, and you should be able to tell them apart to know which one has been submitted and with what values You could use this as a condition to split the workflows, or you could also even use this as a condition in Google Tag Manager, the form ID. For example, if you wanted to, do I have a, yeah, I have a variable for the form ID. For example, if you only wanted to send to Facebook Conversions API a specific form, a specific a specific form using their ID. So right now it will fire and it will send to Facebook, it will send to Public Connect all the forms on your website built with Contact Form 7. But let's say that you only wanted to fire on a specific form, or maybe two, or I don't know. You would have to get the form ID from your website. Let me quickly go back to the website and see what is the form ID. Okay, there we go, it's 5. Actually, I already knew that. But you should get the form ID. And in Google Tag Manager, on your trigger, you would want to add another condition, such as, let me go here, and the trigger. So right now it fires on all the custom events named GTM for WP.contactform7 submitted. And you would have to say only some custom events, and here you should look for the form ID variable, and you should say, okay, it should be equal to 5. To 5. If I only wanted to send this information to Public Connect just for this webhook only. If there would be multiple forms, for example, ID 5 and 7 and I don't know, 10 and so on, the IDs are going to be different for you. The easiest way to do it should be matches regex, and you would type all the values in this box and separate it with the pipe symbol. So it would be 5 pipe, I said 7 and 10. So whenever a form with the ID either 5 or 7 or 10 is being submitted, it should send this data to Public Connect, and from there on to Facebook Conversions API and to Google Sheets. To keep it simple, I'm just going to keep it to 5, which is my only form. But in case you need it to fire on multiple forms, you know how to do it. Okay, back into Public Connect. Let's go back to Public Connect. So we have all this information. Whenever a form gets submitted, Google Tag Manager is pushing this information to Public Connect through a webhook. So what are we going to do now? Now we want to send this information to Facebook through their Conversions API. So we have this Facebook Conversions. And it asks us, what do we want to send? I used a lead event because that's what I used in the web tracking version as well. But you could, let me quickly go back to Google Tag Manager. If you see on this tag, the CF7 lead tag, you could change this to, I don't know, purchase schedule, whatever. And it could even be custom. You could set it your own name, like something, I don't know, someone has messaged me. Well, if you wanted that, I'm just going to use lead for this example, but you should use the same event name both in the web tracking version, or when you do it through their web pixel, as well as through Facebook Conversions API. So if you don't plan to use lead in Public Connect, here you should send other events. So now you would be able to choose from a longer list of events. I forgot that it asks me to authorize to connect to Facebook. I have already done this, so I'm just going to click save because it's right here. For you would probably have to click on add new connection first. It would just be like a very short wizard, like next, continue, accept, and whatever. I'm going to save. And if you see right here, you can use the add event info. You can choose from all that big list of events. I said that I'm going to be using the send lead event, so it's just to keep it simple, but know that you can send other types of events as well. And now it asks me the information that is needed for Facebook Conversion API. One thing you should know, let me see if I still have this tab open, is that whenever you send conversions from a website through Facebook Conversions API, you should set at least these 3 parameters, and those 3 parameters are client user agent, action source, which is always the website if you're sending from the website, and event source URL, which is the page on your website where the event has been sent from. The others are optional, but they help with it helps with two things. One, if you're also using web tracking, also their web pixel, it helps with deduplicating events. Otherwise, you would have the same conversion counted twice. And it also helps if you provide more information. It helps Facebook recognize the actual Facebook user who has converted on your website. So if you only send the client user agent action source and event source URL, Facebook would say, okay, someone has converted, or like this form has converted this many times, but it will likely not be able to recognize which of their Facebook users have been the ones who have converted. If you send more information, such as the IP, as well as the Facebook browser ID and Facebook click ID, it might be able to also or it will be more likely to be able to recognize the actual Facebook user who has converted, and this will help with your audiences and with remarketing and so on. Okay, let's just go through the fields that we are going to send to Facebook Conversions API. So the pixel ID is mandatory. You could manually type it in here. I'm already sending it through the webhook to keep it simple, so it's this pixel ID. I'm going to go through here, and it should be the pixel ID. There we go. Event ID, it's not mandatory, but if we send the event ID, it will greatly help with deduplicating conversions. So I am making sure that we send the same event ID both in the web version as well in the web tracking version through their pixel, as well as the event being sent through Facebook Conversions API. So there is a variable that we are sending for this purpose, and it's okay, there you go, event ID. Event time, I just like to leave this one blank. Public Connect will automatically send the current timestamp. I am sending the event, but I think it might not be formatted properly, and you would have to either use a date formatter in Public Connect, yeah, or you could also just change it with JavaScript prior to being sent to the webhook. But the safest and the easiest way is to just leave this field blank. It will not be sent blank. It will Public Connect will send the current timestamp. Event name, you can only choose from lead, so it will be lead because we have selected here the send lead event. But if you had selected the send other event, you would be able to select from that long list of events. Source URL, remember this is needed if you're sending from a website, and it is the page where the conversion has happened. We are sending this one. It's in the, should be something with page or URL. Let me see. Okay, there you go, page URL, it's this one. Test event code, this you should only use while you are debugging, while you are testing. And if you want your events to show up in the events manager here in the test events tab, you need to type in the test event code. Just remember that once you are done testing, you should remove this field. So I am going to place it in here while we are debugging this, but at the end I'm going to delete it. So let's go to the events manager, and it's right here, it's this code. Actually, if you don't have any events, let me just clear the activity. This tab will look like this. So it's this code right here. You copy it, and test event code. Okay, client IP address. I am sending the IP currently. This is up to you whether you want to send it or not as well. It should be the visitor IP right here. Client user agent, it's mandatory for website events, and it's the first field. Click ID and browser ID, not mandatory but very good to have for Facebook to be able to recognize the user or the user who has converted. So it's right here, Facebook click ID as well as Facebook browser ID. And then there are a couple of more fields where you could send the name, first name, last name, phone number, email, and so on. This is you could especially get these if you're getting purchases on your website. So if it's like an e-commerce store. I prefer not to send this kind of information, but it's up to you on what you want to send to Facebook. I usually don't send the visitor IP as well, but again, this is up to you. But I think, yeah, you should, especially if you're targeting users in a country affected by GDPR, you should get their consent prior to sending this information. So keep that in mind. And all the other ones, I'm just going to leave them as they are, and I'm going to save and send the test request. If everything is correct, I should get a success message. Yes, there we go. And if we go to the events manager, since I have copied this text code, it should show up here soon as an event sent from the server. Okay, there we go. And it also shows that it has been deduplicated. The browser event has already arrived earlier, but I cleared the activity, and that's why it wasn't. It's not shown anymore. So it has arrived. It's sent from the server, and it has this event ID. Which is how, well, it's the main indicator for Facebook to be able to deduplicate events, but it also works if the event ID is not identical. I found this the hard way because the first time I tried this, the event IDs were not identical, but my events were still getting deduplicated because I was sending all the extra information, such as the IP address, the Facebook click ID, the Facebook browser ID, and so on. Okay, so you actually, we're kind of done here. We know that it works as expected. I am going to, in Google Tag Manager, I'm going to submit now. So now it could be sent to live, since we know that it's working as expected. And last but not least, we're also going to be sending this data, not this data, well, some of this data to Google Sheets. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I already have all the inputs values right here. So while there are other solutions to send data from contact form 7 to Google Sheets, we already have so much data in here in our public connect webhook that we just might as well send it to Google Sheets as well. Furthermore, we also have stuff like visitor IP if you wanted that one. I guess page URL, date. Yeah, the user agent is like too technical, like not that useful to send into Google Sheets maybe. Anyway, let's okay, do not forget, while until you click submit, everything that you have done in Google Tag Manager only affects yourself, your browser. So now that we know that it works, we can submit it. I would usually add something like added Facebook tracking web plus conversions API for contact form 7 from submissions. I usually try to write something meaningful in the version name so that I can remember 1 year later what I did and like when I did it, if I have to browse through the versions, but that's completely optional. So right now, whenever somebody converts on, well, there is nobody else, this is just a blank new website, but whenever somebody else converts on your website, their conversion will be sent to Facebook both through the web pixel as well as through conversions API, and the events will get deduplicated. We could check this. Actually, let's do this. Let's go to the events manager. I have no idea where all these events just came from. 227. Okay, I'm hoping it's just a one-time error. We'll see. I'm going to clear the activity, and I would like to check that what we have done is working as expected. So I'm going to close the tag assistant, and I'm going to I'm using so while I'm using this field, because I want to test at the same time both the browser events, which is done through this box, this field right here, as well as the server events, because I still didn't remove this text from my webhook. So if I fill in this this form and I submit, I should be able to see both of them. As you will notice, the web tracking method, like the one through the browser, through their web pixel, is instant, and the server event should show up in maybe 30 seconds later, and it will get deduplicated. The main advantage to having both web and server tracking, okay, there we go, they're both here, and you can check the event IDs are identical. That's one of the reasons why they get deduplicated. Oh, sorry, this is website and this is the server. One of the advantages of having Facebook Conversions API tracking is that if the user uses an ad blocker, which is very likely to block the Facebook pixel, it will very likely not block the well, it shouldn't. I don't really see how it could block the submission or the tracking through the Facebook Conversions API. So that's one of the reasons. The other advantage or reason is that you don't even need to use the web pixel, the Facebook web pixel, if you don't want to. So I could just go in my tag manager and I could either pause this tag, or I could completely delete it. This is the one that is sending conversions through their web pixel, and my conversions would still be tracked properly. It's just that it would only be through the Conversions API. One upside would be that, well, less external scripts being loaded on your website, so this would help up with the page speed, but it's usually not that important or not that significant. Okay, yeah, well, the events are getting here. They're deduplicated properly, and that's about it. Last but not least, let's also send the contact form 7 inputs to Google Sheets. So what I want to do is I'm going to create a new sheet, which you can do by going to sheets.new. I'm going to call it CF7 form submissions. You could call it whatever you want. I just need something that I can easily recognize. And let's see what kind of information we want to collect. We are going to collect name, email, subject, message, maybe visitor IP as well, and yeah, the form ID, so that we can tell them apart easily. So it should be, I'm going to add column headers. So name, email, subject, message, I said visitor IP, and form ID. Now, if you are familiar with custom JavaScript, you could send a lot more information. Like you could send how many pages were visited prior to submitting, how I don't know, you could track any other interaction and say, like, has the user viewed a specific video prior to submitting this form, or like any other information. But so while it's easy once you send this data to Public Connect, the difficult part becomes knowing JavaScript to track the information that you want to measure, that you want to send to Google Sheets, your own database, or anything like that. So in my example, I have used Contact Form 7 because it's a very popular plugin, and because it has that integration with Google Tag Manager for WordPress. But you could realistically track any website interaction on your through Google Tag Manager and through Public Connect using their webhook. Okay, let's go back to Public Connect, and after sending the data to Facebook Conversion API, actually I might also want to add right here date, because I am sending the date as well, but I don't think I formatted it nicely. I'm just going to leave it as it is right now, although Public Connect does have a date formatter. It's oh yeah, there you go, it's a datetime formatter, but I'm going to skip this one right now. I'm just going to add a Google Sheets step, and I would like to add a new row whenever a form gets submitted. Connect, it's this one, I think. I already authorized my accounts with Public Connect. For you, if you have not yet done so, you would have to go through the add new connection first. Again, it's just like a super simple wizard. Next, next, accept, next, and that's it. Okay, and it automatically picks up the latest sheet on my account. If not, you could just click this caret or this arrow down and select your your own or like the sheet that you want to connect it to. And now let's select what kind of data we want to send. So in the name column, I'm going to send, actually you can just go through here and scroll. So it should be this value. In the email, it should be this value. The subject should be, it was hello, yes. And the message was, how are you? The visitor IP, there we go. Date. Oh, I should tell you that this date is so when you pick the date for JavaScript from the browser, it picks the local date. So for example, if your users are from all over the world, this would help you understand what time it was when they submitted and in which time zone. Because for example, in Google Analytics, all the conversions are set to your own time zone. It's a bit more difficult to analyze. And last but not least, the form ID. I think it's the last one. Yeah, there we go. And if I click save and send test request, it should, okay, there we go. I'm going to remove the bolded text. Okay, now all my messages are getting sent to Google Sheets as well. Keep in mind that since we're using webhooks and we're using web interaction, so we're picking data from the website, it will only work from here, from this moment on. It will not import your previous messages. And let's do one more test and see if it gets sent to Google Sheets as well. Yeah, I think it should also show up in here. Let's clear the activity. Actually, I'm going to open it one more time, and it should show up both in test events in Facebook as well, and it should also get into Google Sheets. So let me go. Okay, the message has been sent. If I go to the events manager, the browser event has already arrived. The server event should arrive soon as well. And if I go to Google Sheets, there we go, it's already sent. I should have used maybe different names, emails to make it easier to differentiate, to tell them apart. But well, you can visit this page. It should be valid for 2 days, and just let me know if you want to see if your submission has arrived or something like that. This is just to be sure that your IP, for example, is getting sent to like your own date, your own local time zone, is working as expected. And let's go back to the events manager, and that's it. We also have this this event sent from the server, and it's been deduplicated. Well, that's about it. Thank you for listening and for your patience. I'll see you next time.